Welcome to the Echoes of Ihsan Podcast. We love to take deep dives into Islamic history and tradition. And today we're going to be time traveling, going back to the early days of Islam, to unpack a topic that might surprise you: mortgaging. Our guide for this journey is going to be the Sahih Bukhari Hadith, specifically Book 45, which focuses entirely on this subject.
It is fascinating, isn't it? You might not expect, to find financial practices like mortgaging back in 7th century Arabia.
Yeah.
But it was very much a part of life even then. I think what's amazing is how these hadiths provide a glimpse into the Prophet Muhammad's life. They reveal a dimension of practicality and financial awareness that many people might not even be familiar with.
Okay, let's dive in. Now, when we think about the Prophet Muhammad, we often picture him as a spiritual leader, a guide. But what really struck me was a hadith that describes his household, possessing only a small amount of barley, barely enough for 2 meals, spread across 9 houses. It really paints this picture of economic hardship.
It does. It challenges the common perception of the Prophet as someone who was always kind of elevated above worldly concerns. And these hadiths remind us that he, like many of his companions, they faced real-world challenges, including financial ones. And I think that makes his example all the more relevant to us today.
It humanizes him,
Yeah.
in a way. It shows that he understood the struggles of everyday people. And it's within this context of financial hardship that we encounter the hadith, where the Prophet mortgages his armor for foodstuff.
Yes. This hadith is pivotal because it shows that the Prophet himself engaged in mortgaging, not out of luxury, but out of necessity. And this directly addresses the question of whether Islam permits mortgaging. And the answer is yes, but with specific conditions, as we see throughout these hadiths.
So it's not a blanket approval, right? There are ethical considerations and guidelines involved.
Absolutely. You see, Islamic teachings are all about balance, and financial dealings are no exception. It's not just about permitting or prohibiting something. It's about ensuring fairness, transparency, and ultimately a just and ethical outcome for everyone involved.
What I find particularly fascinating is that these hadiths don't just speak in abstract terms. They provide practical guidelines, like the one stating that if someone mortgages an animal, they can still use it as long as they take care of its upkeep. It seems like a very pragmatic approach.
It is. Islamic law is deeply rooted in practicality. It acknowledges that people have needs, and sometimes those needs necessitate financial transactions, like borrowing or lending. But within that framework, it strives to ensure that no one is exploited or unduly burdened.
So it's about recognizing both the need and the potential for misuse. And it's about setting up safeguards to ensure that the transaction benefits both parties. It reminds me of modern-day discussions around responsible lending and ethical financing.
You've hit the nail on the head. The principles we see reflected in these hadiths are incredibly relevant to contemporary discussions about responsible finance, fair trade, and even social justice.
Now, speaking of specific examples, there's one hadith that really captured my attention: the story of Muhammad bin Maslama and Ka'b bin al-Ashraf.
Yes. This is a more complex and layered narrative. It involves Muhammad bin Maslama mortgaging his weapons to gain the trust of Ka'b bin al-Ashraf, a Jewish leader in Medina, which ultimately leads to Ka'b's death.
This story raises some thought-provoking questions. While it illustrates how mortgaging was interwoven into the social and political dynamics of the time, it's essential to remember the historical context. This was a time of conflict and complex tribal alliances.
Precisely. It's crucial to approach this hadith with nuance and avoid drawing simplistic conclusions. Islamic scholars have debated this event extensively, delving into the intricacies of warfare, self-defense, and the complex ethical questions that it raises.
So while this particular hadith may not directly provide guidelines on the financial aspects of mortgaging, it does highlight how such transactions can be used in various ways, some more ethically ambiguous than others.
Exactly. And it underscores the importance of analyzing historical events within their context, recognizing the complexities, and the need for deeper understanding.
It seems like a reminder to approach even seemingly straightforward concepts like mortgaging with a critical eye, considering the full range of their potential applications and implications.
It's remarkable how even a seemingly simple transaction like mortgaging can reveal so much about the social and ethical fabric of a society.
You're absolutely right, and I think it's particularly interesting how these teachings on mortgaging connect to the broader Islamic emphasis on social justice and economic fairness.
That's a keen observation. You see, Islam places great importance on the well-being of the entire community, not just individuals. It's about ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to thrive and that wealth isn't concentrated in the hands of a few. And so financial transactions, including mortgaging, are viewed through this lens of social responsibility.
So it's not just about avoiding individual harm or exploitation, but about contributing to a system that promotes fairness and equity.
Precisely. Take, for instance, the concept of zakat, one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Zakat mandates that Muslims give a portion of their wealth to charity. This act of giving isn't just about personal piety, it's about redistributing wealth and supporting the less fortunate, creating a safety net for those who might be struggling financially.
Wow. So even something as personal as wealth accumulation is viewed through a communal lens in Islam. It really emphasizes the interconnectedness of society.
Exactly. And this idea of shared responsibility ties directly into the ethical guidelines that we see in the hadiths about mortgaging. The emphasis on fairness and transparency ensures that financial transactions don't lead to one party taking advantage of another, particularly those who might be in a more vulnerable position.
It's like Islam is saying, yes, financial transactions are a part of life, but let's make sure they're conducted in a way that upholds the dignity and well-being of everyone involved.
You've captured it perfectly. It's about recognizing that even seemingly individual financial decisions have a ripple effect on the larger community. And those ripples can either contribute to a more just and equitable society or exacerbate existing inequalities.
I'm starting to see how these concepts, which might seem disparate at first glance, are all intricately connected. It's like weaving a tapestry of ethical conduct, where individual threads of fairness, transparency, and social responsibility all come together to create a larger, more beautiful picture.
That's a beautiful analogy, and it highlights how Islam offers a holistic approach to life, where spirituality, ethics, and practical matters are all interwoven. It's not about compartmentalizing different aspects of our lives, but about recognizing their interconnectedness.
So when we talk about these teachings on mortgaging, we're not just talking about a specific financial transaction, but about building a more just and compassionate society as a whole.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that wealth isn't just about personal accumulation. It's a resource that can be used to uplift others, to create opportunities, and to foster a sense of shared prosperity.
You know, it's striking how relevant these teachings are to the challenges we face in the modern world. We're still grappling with issues of economic disparity, financial exploitation, and systems that often perpetuate inequality.
I agree. These hadiths, while rooted in a specific time and context, speak to a universal human need for fairness, justice, and a sense of shared responsibility.
They offer a timeless wisdom that transcends cultural and historical boundaries, reminding us that true prosperity is not just about individual wealth, but about creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to flourish.
And I think that's a message that resonates deeply, regardless of one's background or beliefs. It's a call to action, an invitation to reevaluate our own financial habits and choices, and to consider how we can contribute to a more equitable and just world.
It's inspiring to think that even something as seemingly mundane as mortgaging can be approached with this kind of intentionality and ethical awareness.
It is, and I think it speaks to the transformative power of Islamic teachings, their ability to elevate even the most ordinary aspects of life into acts of worship and service to others.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful. It's made me think about my own financial decisions in a whole new light.
It's been my pleasure exploring these profound teachings with you, and I hope our listeners are finding this journey as enlightening as we are.
Before we move on to our final segment, I want to touch on one more hadith that really struck a chord with me. It's the one narrated by Abdullah bin Masud, where he warns against taking a false oath to seize someone's property.
Ah, yes. This hadith goes straight to the heart of ethical conduct in financial dealings. It's a stark reminder that true wealth isn't acquired through deception or manipulation, but through honesty and integrity.
And it's not just about avoiding blatant dishonesty, right? It seems to speak to a deeper level of intentionality, a commitment to upholding moral principles, even when faced with temptation or pressure to compromise.
You're absolutely right. It's about cultivating that inner compass of integrity, that unwavering commitment to doing what's right, even when no one is watching, even when it might be to our disadvantage.
And speaking of doing what's right even when it's difficult, there's the story of Al-Ash'ath bin Qais, who almost took a false oath in a property dispute, but was stopped just in time by the revelation of Quranic verses condemning such actions.
Yes. That story is incredibly powerful. It demonstrates how deeply Islam values honesty and fairness, even in matters of personal gain, Imagine the internal struggle Al-Ash'ath must have felt, that pull towards securing his own interests, even through potentially unethical means. And then that incredible moment of divine intervention, when the Quranic verses were revealed, reminding him of the higher moral ground.
It's like a reminder that we're always being guided, even when we might be tempted to stray.
Exactly. And that guidance isn't just about external rules and regulations. It's about cultivating that inner awareness, that voice of conscience, that reminds us of what truly aligns with our values.
You know, these stories and teachings
Yeah.
have really made me think about how we navigate financial decisions in today's world. We're bombarded with messages that encourage us to prioritize personal gain, to accumulate wealth, often at the expense of others or the environment. It's easy to get caught up in that mindset and lose sight of these fundamental principles of fairness and ethical conduct.
It is, but I think that's precisely why these hadiths are so relevant and timely. They offer an alternative framework, a way of approaching financial matters that prioritizes justice, compassion, and a sense of shared responsibility.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what key takeaways would you want our listeners to carry with them?
I'd say the most important takeaway is that even something as seemingly mundane as mortgaging, as we've seen through these hadiths, can be an opportunity to embody Islamic values. It's about approaching financial transactions and really all our dealings with that lens of ethical awareness.
It's about asking ourselves, not just can I do this, but should I do this? Is this just? Is it fair? Does it contribute to the well-being of others?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our financial decisions have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for our families, our communities, and even the wider world.
It's about shifting our mindset from one of individual gain to one of collective well-being.
And I think that's a powerful and transformative message. It's about recognizing that true wealth isn't just about the numbers in our bank accounts, it's about the richness of our character, the integrity of our actions, and the positive impact we have on the world around us.
This deep dive has been truly enlightening. We've journeyed back in time to explore practices of the Prophet Muhammad and early Muslims, and what we found are principles that are incredibly relevant to our lives today.
It's been a pleasure exploring these profound teachings with you. I hope our listeners feel inspired to delve deeper into these concepts and to discover how they can apply this timeless wisdom to their own lives.
Thank you for joining us on this fascinating exploration of mortgaging in early Islam. We encourage you to continue this journey of learning and discovery, seeking knowledge, and striving for a more ethical and just world.